Testing. This is Stan Tinsley. This is May the 16th, 1990. I'm interviewing Mr. W.E. Brewer of 5501 Newberry Road in Knoxville, Tennessee. Next voice you'll hear will be that of Mr. Brewer. Thank you. Mr. Brewer, when did you join the service?
I was inducted July of '43.
Okay. Did you volunteer?
No, I was drafted. My mother and dad wouldn't see to that.
Why did you join the branch of service that you did?
I was asked when I was inducted if I wanted the Navy or the Army, and I chose the Army.
What do you remember about leaving home?
Well, it was the first time I had been in a distance from home.
Right.
And it was a brand new experience all the way around.
How old were you?
18.
18. Anybody else in your family in the service?
No, I was the only one.
Describe the places where you trained and where you were sent from there.
Well, the first Army camp that we went to was Fort Benjamin, Harrison, Indiana. And from there we went to Camp Fannin, Texas. That's about 8 miles out of Tyler, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It was a new camp. In fact, about it didn't even have any grass growing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was about, as I remember, about 28 of us boys from the same county. And some of them I went to school with.
Mm-hmm.
We were all together.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we stayed together. Went through basic training.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 17 weeks of what I would call some of the best basic training that you could have. And when the 17 weeks was up, it was getting close to Christmas. And we had 14 days leave from Camp Fannin to get home. We spent about 7 days at home, I think, and the rest of it on the road to Fort Ord, California.
Hmm.
And we stayed at Fort Ord just a short while, and they moved us from there to a little island out in a bay from San Francisco called Angel Island, surrounded by Alcatraz halfway in between.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the Golden Gates. We stayed there, I suppose, about 6 weeks, something like that. And they loaded us up and took us to 17 weeks on the water to Brisbane, Australia. From Brisbane, they moved us by Page Railroad with engines about the size of one of our big automobiles and wooden cars. 2 or 3 days up through Australia to a place called Rockhampton. And then it was kind of in the back country, and there we took about a month's jungle training there. And they loaded us up on ship again and took us to New Guinea, a place called French Haven, which had already been taken by my division that I had gone in, that I was into then. Rockhampton, they put us in the 41st Infantry Division that they'd pull back out in New Guinea that was all diseased and shot up, and we were replacements.
Yeah. What were you trained to do?
Rifleman.
Rifleman.
Mm-hmm. And we stayed at French Haven, I guess, maybe 6 weeks, more jungle training. And then the real thing come up. It was an island called Hollandia. And that was DDHI, first wave. And it was quite a little battle with them for a while, and we secured it. And Don't guess was there over a couple of months and moved us on to this island called Biak Island. And it was much worse than Hollandia. So we had 3 airfields there that they needed to bomb the Philippines. This is a coral island, and the airfields are made out of coral.
Mm-hmm.
And they worked us over there for a while. We hit the beach, and we drove about 8 miles down the beach to the first airfield called Maltner. And you had about 300 feet on the beach before it was a cliff that went up about 100 feet, and to the left was water. And we got the 3rd Battalion in on the airfield, and they drove a wedge between them and my battalion, which was the 2nd. Went back behind us and drove another wedge, cut us off completely. Finally got the 3rd Battalion back out, and they was closing in on us. Our casualty was real heavy. It was real heavy. And they brought in 3 Sherman tanks to get the 3rd Battalion out. Of course, I happened to be with the 1st Platoon of F Company that was up front. And my platoon had to follow the tanks in, try to get them out. Of course, trying to knock the tanks out, they knocked most of my platoon out, too.
Mm-hmm.
And we got them out, but they had us cut off behind. And they had to come in and get us for water. Amphibious trucks, alligators, anything that floats.
Mm-hmm.
And A-20s and B-25s, anything get in there to cover our retreat, I guess you'd call it.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back where we made the initial landing, and it was 3 days back across that island, on foot by foot. And most of the time, you know, we were fighting snipers, delayed action, they're trying to delay us and this, that, and the other. And we finally got to the edge of this airfield, and there was a drop-off, big cliff went down. And G Company, I believe it was, went down that night in the edge of the airfield. And we were up on the cliff. Of course, they attacked G Company all night long. It just went on all night long. We carried the wounded out and had to take a rope down that bluff, because they couldn't use any lights, you know, and stretch it all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Follow that rope down there and get a hold of it, and take about 6 of us on the litter to get one of them back out of there. So the next morning, we moved through where G Company was. And it had really been a battlefield, you know. Those gaps was laying, you have to step over them. And we had one machine gunner, I don't know how many he got, must have got 40 or 50.
Mm-hmm.
They just scattered down this little path as far as that 30 caliber machine gun was effective, you know. And some of them was still moaning and groaning. But all very wounded out that night.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we moved on through and got down, moving into where the runway was. Of course, it was knocked out because 2 or 3 days before, our B-29 had come over there and pulverized it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And never will forget, first time they hit us, we hit the ground, and I looked over to my right. There was a skeleton laying there, a Japanese skeleton. He must have been an officer because he still had his leather boots on. He was laying there, you know. Well, from there we moved on.
You mean he's been there long enough to be...
He'd been there long enough. I don't know why they hadn't got him, but he'd been there long enough that it decayed. There's nothing but the skeleton and the boots on. So we moved on from there toward the center of the airfield, and that's when they unloaded on us. Pinned us down. It was one of those things you just couldn't stick your head up.
Yeah.
This went on all day long. And
Did you all take any prisoners?
yeah, we took prisoners.
Okay.
So, wasn't a lot of them. This went on all day long. About 11 o'clock that day, an airburst from any aircraft gun they had up on the hill somewhere back in there. They was firing it over our heads and exploding. You set those shells, you know, and they was firing it over the head and exploding, trying to get us up. And one of those airbursts got me in the back of the left thigh.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that there's so much going on, you know. You couldn't. We had our medics are so busy with so many of them that was wounded worse than I was. It finally got some help. Got my pants leg all, made a tourniquet. I was bleeding pretty bad. And right before I got wounded, this bomb crater that I passed up when we come through there because I didn't want to get in it. Some more boys did. But it was, as far as I was concerned, it was the wrong place to get in. I'd rather be laying out in the open. Well, the worst happened when I figured it would, because I heard this shell come in, and I looked, and it went right in the middle of that big bomb crater. All you could see of them was coming up, arms and legs. Well, that was about 11 o'clock, and that's when I got hit, and I had to lay there most of the day, till that afternoon late, and finally eased off. All the firing did. And I crawled back with the help of a stick I got. One leg knocked out, I hobbled back to the company CP and stayed there in a hole with another boy till way in the night. They started moving us back toward the beach. And about before daylight, I made it to the beach. And we were short on supplies because we'd been on foot for 3 days. And the amphibious alligators and trucks are trying to make it in, and they're throwing mortars on them and running back, but finally they succeed in coming in, unloaded their rations and ammunition, and right after daylight we headed out of there, the wounded, on these amphibious vehicles in a circle. Got out in the ocean, and this lone Jap Zero cut his motors off, come down over these hills, and glided right in over us and dropped a 500-pounder. But luckily he didn't get a direct hit. We got a lot of shrapnel hitting the sides of him. And we had about 8 miles to go back down the beach where we came from. And had an evacuation hospital down there. And I got treated down there for my wound. They cleaned it up.
Cut his motors so you wouldn't hear him coming?
Yeah, cut him back off and was gone. Yeah, he couldn't hear him. He just like a kite,
Yeah. Go ahead.
So they dressed my wound, stayed there all night, and the next day they moved all us wounded out to a hospital ship out in the bay. And put us on it. They had these cranes that went down and picked us up, took us downstairs, and I got cleaned up. Mud, blood, and everything else, got cleaned up. So we was, I guess, 2 or 3 more days or longer going back to French Haven, that area of New Guinea where we come from, where they had a hospital. So I stayed there 3 months and got better, and they sent me back to my outfit. Sent me back, same outfit, back on Biak Island. They were still there. And we'd been there, the outfit stayed there about 8 months, I guess, and when I got back, they were still running patrols, which I got in on more patrols, mopping up operation. Because there's so many on there, strays and this, that, and the other. Sometimes they just come in, starved to death.
Is that right?
Yeah, and sometimes take them up on the side of the road, then maybe bulldozers.
When you got wounded and got in the hospital, did you have any hopes of getting back to the States, or did you know pretty well you were going to go back in
I thought, of course, at the hospital, they told me I'd never see combat again.
Mm-hmm.
But once you had combat experience, it was if you could hobble or do anything, they'd send you right back.
I see.
So I ended up back in my outfit, and after I got back to the outfit, it wasn't long until they sent us into the Philippines, now on another major campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for several weeks. The island was a pretty good sized island. And we cleaned up one side of it, and the rest of them headed to the other place over in there called the Bow. So we had to go by water up before we could to a place called Cotabato and up to the Bow River. And we were about, I think, getting to where we were going, pretty close to the Bow, by foot, before they could with trucks and water and this, that, and the other. We was on foot 3 or 4 days. And caught them again back in there while they got away from us. And engaged them for quite a few days back in there, hit and run, and any way we could get them.
Yeah.
So we got out of there and they sent us back to where we made the initial landing near Zamboanga.
Mm-hmm.
And from there on, it was a mopping up operation. We had problems all over the island, you know, where they were showing up in pockets and terrorizing the Filipino population. There's one place down there called San Ramon. They had a prison there, and it had a bunch of collaborators in it. They worked for the Japs. So the Japs was coming out of the jungles back in there and coming in there and getting their women and girls and raping them, killing them, and whatever they want to do, you know. So they sent my company down there to clean up this mess. And we found them back in there, and we stopped their what was going on with them. We cleaned them out.
Mm-hmm.
Got back to the original place where we made the first landing near Zamboanga.
Hmm.
And of course the war was winding down.
Yeah.
And the campaign had wound down, so I came down with malaria. And when the war was over, I was in the hospital with malaria. Of course, I was fixing to get out. I was getting better. Went back to my outfit. Wasn't there long until they loaded us up and sent us into Japan's occupation troops. A place called Kiri, 20 miles from Hiroshima. So I was in Hiroshima right after we got there. And our job was, as you know, to clean it all up. We was in charge of the naval base. We had some destroyers and submarines out there. And at the time, I was sergeant of the guard there, I guess a half dozen times.
Mm-hmm.
And all over the area. And the Japanese people population was, I found to be real nice to us.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. Of course, they wasn't friendly around Hiroshima.
Yeah.
With us at all. A lot of the population around that, where the bomb blasts were, still had bandages where they'd been burned and that, and the other. I guess they died later on.
Yeah.
But there's just numbers of them that I encountered that had been badly burned that are still going.
Mm.
So I stayed there and we cleaned it up, and I had enough points to head home, so I got on, put me on a train and headed for Yokohama. I think that's where we got on another ship and headed for San Diego, California. It was on the water 14 days going to San Diego. From there we got on a troop ship and a troop train. The only time they'd ever stopped was change engines and cruise and to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And was discharged there.
When were you discharged? Remember that?
Yes, it was January the 14th, 46.
You know, you being like most of us, hadn't been much any place until you were in the service.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of guys from this part of the country in your unit, but you had a lot of other people too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of the guys in the other part of the country, and how'd you get along with them?
Got along fine. We had, it was really an education to be with so many different nationalities.
Mm-hmm.
Never will forget this little Jewish boy. He wouldn't weigh 100 pounds wet, and his pack was about as big as he was.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, certain days they'd only eat a certain food. So I liked him, and he, there was nothing that any of us could do or would do that little fellow wouldn't do too.
Yes, that right.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I traded my sea rations that he would eat to some of his that he wouldn't eat, you know.
Yeah,
on certain
right,
days.
we used to do all that on
certain days. A lot of boys out of New York City, scattered holidays all over, but I suppose that the Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia boys, Mississippi outnumbered them.
Mm-hmm. It's an experience, isn't it, when you meet those guys?
Oh, yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
Knox Central, Bartlesville, Kentucky.
That's it. From Kentucky.
Yeah,
originally.
originally, yeah.
You still keep in touch with any of the fellows you served with?
Some of the boys, you know, that one of them's up at Dean Station.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to him every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one in Morristown. There's two in the Cincinnati area. One still around Barberville. And I could, I suppose, contact some of the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them got banged up pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember most about your time overseas?
Well, some of the combat experiences are quite outstanding. I get this one. It was after it already landed on, made invasion of Mindanao. Having problems across the bay about 20 miles over there, something like that. I don't know, they're called Isabella. So they loaded up a company of us, and we went over into this little village, and the Japs heading for them. They run from us.
Mm-hmm.
They did a lot of cleaning up. And this one building that we run into had been their headquarters. And out back, it had a guillotine. It's the first one I'd ever seen. It had a hole dug behind it, and this is where they're bringing in these Japanese, you know, that they catch that was working with us. Stick their head in there and drop that blade down, cut it off, and let it roll over into the head, into the hole.
I'll be darned. Catching the Japanese from catching the Philippines catching the Japanese?
No,
or
Japanese
catching
Japanese
catching
the
the
Filipinos in.
catching the ones
Yeah,
that
they
were,
occupied it.
yeah, the ones that were friendly and helping the United States.
Yeah, the guerrillas.
Guerrillas. Hmm.
Whatever they get a hold of that was a threat to them.
How were your relationships with the civilians? Starting with Australia and on up to those that where you mixed with them at all.
Well, Australia didn't have any time there to mix with them, but what it did, they were wonderful people.
Mm-hmm.
Going over on a boat, 17 days going over, a boy died of spinal meningitis. So when we unloaded at Brisbane, they quarantined us in a baseball park called Ascot.
Mm-hmm.
We were in there for 2 weeks. And on this train, when they'd stop going into Rockhampton, there was always a lot of women bring out the molasses bread and this, that, and the other to give to us. Real nice people.
Mm-hmm.
We were moving so fast, we really didn't have time to.
And you said in the, other than Hiroshima in Japan, the people were pretty nice to you there.
Well, when we got off the ship in Japan to occupy part of it, we were going to occupy. On into the islands, they were so heavily mined that they'd stop the ship late in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And you boys go around it with small boats all night long, keep the mines from floating in. But a Japanese pilot to take the ship in. And when they got it in, we got off and on the side of it on rope ladders. That's the way we got on it.
Mm-hmm.
Up these rope ladders.
Mm-hmm.
We got on these L-7 craft, little landing craft, hold about a platoon of us. It was pretty rough. So when we got on the ground, when we stepped on the Japanese soil, it really was a peculiar feeling.
I bet.
These Japanese, I guess as police officers, they'd lined up through there. It was a column of twos. Of course, we walked in between them, and all of them had their backs to us. And there's quite a few of them,
Mm-hmm.
And this was strange, too. We had ammunition, but we didn't have the rifles loaded, because we didn't know what we was going to run into. It was a way that letting us know that we were superior to them.
Mm-hmm. I see.
But the strange thing about it, after we got inland and got set up, there was no civilians. The women and children, everybody had left. They'd gone to the end. They had been told that we was a bunch of animals.
Yeah.
Kill them, rape them, anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But after got to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Love you all the time. You know,
Is that
anything he could do for you, no matter what. Real fine people.
About the same world over,
They
I
are,
guess.
yes.
You got home on leave except that one time after your training, did you?
Yeah, that's the only time I got home.
Did you get many letters back and forth? How was the mail service?
Well, when we were in combat, it would go quite a while before the mail and everything. It was there, but it just wasn't catching up with it. I know one time my parents got so worried about me that they got a congressman to run me down.
Mm-hmm.
And got a letter from him, you know, but
Yeah.
it was been moving so fast, couldn't catch up with it. So at the time I was ended up in the hospital on a wound, I hadn't had it mail a long time. And I got 40-some letters at one time. I had a lot of news to catch up with.
47 letters at
47
one time.
at one time.
You tell me you did after the war was over. You with the outfit.
I come back home, went to school for a couple of years, and went up north. Worked up there, come back, went to the utility company
Yeah.
for a couple of years. And my wife was over here. Family, most of her family was here.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I had a lot of relatives through this country too. My grandfather came out of Sneeville.
That's right.
I met her at St. Mary's Hospital. I had a brother-in-law to come over there for surgery. I met her over there. Over there to visit him.
I want to hear this.
Yeah.
Visit my wife.
We've already
Right.
howdy-doed him. With
So, this went on a year over, didn't it?
yeah.
Got married and I come over here.
Who did you work for over here? In Knoxville?
First, I worked for Commonwealth Life Insurance Company.
Yeah, that's right. You told me that.
And then from there, I got into the service station business. Spent a couple of years with Hull Ford, selling cars.
We refer to it as the university the whole time.
And then I went back in the insurance business, stayed in it for about 22 years.
That's it. Right. Oh, Dobbs, that was quite an outfit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank God.
I referred to it as Hull Dobbs University.
You learned plenty here.
He got several degrees.
So did you have any feelings about the people of draft age that weren't in the service?
I wondered why a lot of them, some of them wasn't in, that I knew was capable. It stung some, yes.
Yeah.
He did. I heard him refer to F Dodgers, and that was the phrase back then.
I had a fellow of mine that was a dentist, and he managed to stay out. He was back here making all that money.
Yeah.
I was in, and I resented that. I never.
It hurts,
yeah,
doesn't it?
It kind of got to you.
Yeah, it stung.
How did the war affect you, and how did it change you?
I grew up real fast.
Yeah, you do.
Real fast. I had a lot of more understanding, respect for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of respect for our country.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew what the sacrifices had to be to keep our country the way it was,
Yeah.
strong and free.
Things changed when you got back here.
Well, you know, I guess like most other soldiers, that
When were you discharged?
I was discharged January the 14th of 46.
I asked this question, but it's on here. What could we have done better during the war?
Well,
I guess
Oh,
everything
that's
could have been
right.
done better.
I really don't know of any area that wasn't covered as good as it could have been covered. In fact, it amazes me to this day how that we got so strong so fast.
It was a really quick build-up, wasn't
It was.
What they're going to do in conjunction with this, they're going to do the home front too. women, you know, that went to work, victory
Oh,
gardens,
yeah.
the whole thing,
Yeah.
and parallel it right with this husband. That's really interesting. I guess you've had more actual combat experience than anybody I've talked to. Just from one place to the other, to back and forth.